Hello, I'm James Izimoha. Welcome to Africa News. Let's see your headlines. At least 32 people have died after a makeshift bridge collapsed in the Democratic Republic of Congo. Advocates call for selfless leadership at the International Leadership Conference in Abuja. Uganda hosts the inaugural Africa Health Summit in Kampala. At least 32 people have died after a makeshift bridge collapsed at a copper mine in the Democratic Republic of Congo. The accident happened on Saturday at the Kalando mine in Lualaba province, with many workers on the bridge at the time. Provincial Interior Minister Roy Kuamba Mayonde says it was caused by the hasty crossing of diggers and that many had entered the site illegally despite warnings of heavy rain and landslide risks. Rescue teams are still searching for workers trapped under the rubble while an investigation has been launched. Still in the DRC, officials have announced a major milestone in the country's mining sector, producing its first 1,000 metric tons of traceable artisanal cobalt. The move aims to formalize a largely informal industry that supplies the bulk of the world's battery metal.
Democratic Republic of Congo says it has produced its first 1,000 metric tons of traceable artisanal cobalt, or some 2,200 pounds. That's a key step in formalizing the sector in a country that supplies the vast majority of the world's battery metal. State-owned mining subsidiary Entreprise Générale du Cobalt, or EGC, announced the milestone on Thursday in Congo's mineral heartland, Kolwezi. CEO Eric Kalala said their vision is to transform artisanal cobalt into a strategic asset under Congolese control.
We have now put in place a solution to control our Congolese artisanal cobalt and also ensure better pay and better working conditions for artisanal miners. I think that EGC is truly a tool of sovereignty for our country because this artisanal production is the most important production it controls.
Congo holds about 72% of global cobalt reserves and accounts for over 74% of supply, much of it from informal artisanal mines. Artisanal mining is a lifeline for the country. It's estimated to employ up to 2 million people and support more than 10 million people indirectly. However, cobalt from the sector is largely unregulated, making it hard to track and vulnerable to government confiscations. That uncertainty reduces the amount of ethically sourced material and pushes up prices for traceable cobalt. Global demand for the mineral is forecast to rise 40% by 2030, driven by demand for electric vehicles and energy storage, according to the International Energy Agency. Automakers and electronics firms increasingly require proof of ethical sourcing, putting pressure on producers to cut out child labor and unsafe practices. EGC said its traceability model will clean up the supply chain and align production with international environmental, social and governance standards. Congo introduced export quotas in October to curb oversupply and support prices following a months-long export ban. Cobalt prices have since sharply rebounded, more than doubling this year.
African leaders are meeting in Kampala for the first African Health Summit, a gathering aimed at reducing the continent's dependence on external support during health emergencies. Delegates say stronger health systems, local manufacturing, and homegrown innovation are essential to protect Africans from future crises.
The inaugural summit brought together policymakers, experts, and innovators with a shared goal: building health systems that can stand on their own during emergencies. Under the theme, Reclaiming Africa's Health Future, discussions focused on lessons from the COVID-19 pandemic and the urgent need to boost the continent's capacity to detect, respond to, and prevent health threats.
Africa is already a laboratory of ideas, mobile money health payments, drone deliveries, and AI-assisted diagnostics. Our scientists lead in genomic surveillance, Our researchers and programs have driven the trials and rollout of malaria vaccines, now expanding across the continent.
Speakers said self-sufficiency in the health sector can be achieved through building stronger research institutions, expanding local production, and ensuring African governments lead on policy while treating health as a foundation for long-term growth.
The time has come to redefine health as a pillar of economic growth and not as a social afterthought. We must build sovereignty in production, in research, and in policy.
Delegates also linked health sovereignty to economic stability and continental security, urging coordinated action among African states. There was also a strong push to harmonize regulations so that African-made medicines, vaccines, and diagnostics can move more easily across borders.
We must harmonize regulatory frameworks to allow medicines, vaccines, diagnostics, and health technologies developed in one African state to be distributed efficiently across the continent.
Participants called on governments to match political commitments with real investments in local industry, research, and technology. Across the venue, innovators showcased homegrown health tools, from diagnostic apps to locally made medical supplies, as delegates positioned Kampala as a rising hub for Africa's health agenda and the start of a long-term push for health sovereignty.
More than 30 months of war have devastated cities and pushed millions from their homes in Sudan, according to the United Nations. And as fighting spreads and humanitarian conditions worsen, experts say the conflict is now a major driver of insecurity on the continent.
Once Africa's second largest country, Sudan is now a nation divided. Millions of civilians trapped in a deadly struggle. The war between the Sudanese military and the rapid support forces has turned bustling Khartoum into a ghost city. What began as a political feud has spiraled into one of the world's worst humanitarian crises. Health, education, and the economy have all but collapsed.
Over 70% of the hospitals are out of service. The capital was occupied by the RSF militia for 2 years. Health facilities were occupied as well. This prevented any efforts to defeat the pandemics, as the state was a war zone. And even medical staff were targeted and killed, and ambulances were looted.
With hospitals shut down and aid convoys struggling to reach conflict zones, civilians bear the heaviest cost.
We escaped under gunfire and lost my husband. I once lived in Omdurman, and after the RSF lost their ground there, the city was hit by diseases like cholera and malaria. Luckily, we're still alive, and that's something to hold on to.
For families like hers, Port Sudan offers a fragile safety, far from the front lines, but even farther from home. In Darfur, history is repeating itself. Fresh reports of atrocities echo the horrors of 20 years ago. The RSF tightened its grip on the region in late October and faces accusations of genocide, ethnic cleansing, and sexual violence. Peace efforts led by the US have so far made little progress. International aid agencies are struggling to meet the growing humanitarian needs.
Our assessments show that everyone is hungry in Al Fasher, and 1 in 4 people face extreme hunger. WFP has warned that many families trapped in Al Fasher are on the brink of starvation.
UN-backed analysis has confirmed famine in parts of South Kordofan and North Darfur. But amid despair, ordinary Sudanese are showing remarkable resilience. Across the country, young volunteers and community groups are stepping up, organizing food drives, sharing supplies, and keeping hope alive.
The biggest role is played by philanthropists. We just help those in need and deliver where we can. We may not stop the fighting, but we can keep our communities alive, connected and hopeful.
As wars spread across Africa, from Sudan to Congo, the Sahel to Ethiopia, voices like these remind the world that resilience still endures, even when peace feels out of reach.
In Abuja, a cross-section of experts and advocates have called on political leaders to embrace selfless service as a cornerstone of nation building. Their message comes on the sidelines of this year's International Leadership Conference, where discussions focused on accountability, integrity, and national interest. They say genuine progress depends on leaders putting the country above personal or partisan gain.
I believe that the missing link is a major missing link is visionary leadership. Literally, we have people in various spheres of leadership in our nation leading us to where they have not been. And for many people, leadership is the occupation of a seat or the fulfillment of an ambition. But leadership is far more than that, if it is to make an impact. The truth of the matter is leadership must be sacrificial. If it is to make meaningful impact, it must be sacrificial. It is all-round sacrifice, the sacrifice of personal gain at the expense of nationhood and national development. That sacrifice must be made if our nation is to make any meaningful progress. That we must see it, and the leaders must see it, that this is not all about them. It's not what to achieve, it is where to take the nation to.
A group of Palestinians fleeing the conflict in Gaza has been granted temporary refuge by South Africa after initially being denied entry. The government says it could not turn them away, given its long-standing support for Palestinian statehood.
After fleeing the dire conditions in Gaza, this Palestinian man and his family have found a temporary refuge in Johannesburg. They are among the 130 Palestinians that South Africa granted entry into the country without travel papers, after initially barring them. He spoke to Reuters at an unidentified location in Johannesburg and did not give his name.
We arrived in South Africa through an organization that assists with evacuations from a humanitarian perspective. I registered through a link that was shared on social media. They contacted me to confirm whether I still wished to travel, to get ready to travel. So I said okay. I got ready and we left.
South Africa has long supported Palestinian aspirations to statehood and filed a case against Israel at the International Court of Justice in 2023, accusing it of genocide in the Gaza war. Israel has denied the accusations. South African President Cyril Ramaphosa spoke Friday about the unexpected arrival of Palestinians, saying his country could not turn them back.
These are people from Gaza who somehow mysteriously were put on a plane that passed by Nairobi and came here. And I said, we cannot turn them back. Even though they do not have the necessary documents and papers, these are people from a strife-torn, a war-torn country. And out of compassion, out of empathy, we must receive them.
According to border authorities, a group of 153 Palestinians arrived at Johannesburg Airport on a chartered Global Airways flight from Kenya on Thursday, without departure stamps, return tickets, or details of accommodation. It was not clear where their journey originated. Ramaphosa said South African intelligence agencies, the Department of Home Affairs, and the Department of International Relations and Cooperation were now assessing the situation.
Well, that's all we have today in Africa News. Thank you for watching and stay tuned to A News.